Hello, and welcome to Tips to Ace the Sight Reading portion of your audition or any other time that you need to sight read. Um, this tends to strike fear into people, and I've lost track of how many times I've heard from students, oh, I'm just not a very good sight reader. I can play, I just can't sight read. And so my response to that is just like anything else, you become better at it if you practice it. And truthfully, you've already had a lot of experience on how to sight read already, because every time I hand out a new piece of music or any other director hands out a new piece of music and you play it for the first time, boom, you're sight reading, whether you are good at it or not, you're doing the thing. Also, when you turn the page in your book and you learn the new excerpts of those things, you are sight reading then also. So you do have experience at it. Your level of success will depend a lot on how diligent you are with the other assignments in band. Are you learning those scales really well? Do you know your fingerings for your instrument? Can you read the notes? Are you keeping up with your theory assignments? All of those things are going to make you better able to handle sight reading. But everybody can get better at it and have a better success at it um, just by doing a few little kind of pre-study things. And that's what this video is about. I remember learning this in about 7th or 8th grade from my band director, and it really changed how I looked at sight reading, and it made it become something really fun to do instead of super scary. So, in hopes of changing your life in regards to sight reading, I'm going to pass on these things to you. So, usually it is included in an audition format. The sight reading part is for two purposes. One, it makes us aware of the fact that you can actually read music and that you don't just memorize everything. You'd be surprised at how many people try to avoid actually learning to read music because they're really good at memorizing things. And as soon as they've heard it a couple times, they can play it. They don't have to actually read it to play it. Um, I don't quite understand why they choose that. I mean, it's helpful if you can memorize things, but it's not hard to learn to read music. So, um, this is just one way we can make sure that you haven't just memorized the whole rest of your audition, but that you actually can read music. Because if you can't, that's going to significantly impact what we can do in a group. The second reason that it is an audition form is to see, kind of get a feeling for how long it might take you to learn the kind of music that we do in that class. And that helps us, again, put you in the group that you belong into. So if it takes you 6 months to learn 8 measures, that's probably too hard of a group for you. So if you do fairly well at sight reading, we can go, oh yeah, they'll probably get it pretty easily and it won't be super frustrating for them or for us waiting for you to spend the time to learn it. So those are two reasons why it exists. Why do we have sight reading portions of the audition? Let's get into actually how to do this. This is the nitty gritty of how to be successful at this part of it. So usually what happens is you've been given a section of music, an excerpt, and it'll usually will say start at measure 14 and go to measure 30 or whatever. It'll be probably marked on there, but if not, we'll tell you. And you need to listen to that and pay attention to where those starts and stops are. Then you will be given a little bit of time, not too much, 1 to 2 minutes maybe, to kind of study it. You are not allowed to play during the study time. But that does not mean that you can't do anything productive during that time, or we wouldn't give you any time, right? So here's what you should be doing. Instead of playing, you can still learn the piece before that. So the first thing that you should look at is the time signatures and the key signatures. So maybe two things. First two things you should look at: time signature, key signature. This was going to tell you what scale you're going to be using. It can give you an idea if it's a major piece or a minor piece. If you see a lot of accidentals in it, yeah, you're probably in a minor key, and that should trigger some things in your brain on what kinds of notes you will be using. Time signature, is it cut time? Is it 4/4? Are there going to be 3 beats in a measure? Is it compound time? All of those things can give you hints on how to approach playing it. Okay. Um, Also, scan through the piece and see if these things change during the course of what you're going to play. So sometimes you're well aware there's in the middle of it, there'll be a key change. And so maybe you started out with 2 flats, but now you have 4. That should significantly impact which notes you play. So you need to be aware of that ahead of time so you're not caught off guard. Does it start in 4/4, then go to 6/8, and then go back to 3/4, or some crazy thing like that in the middle? You need to be aware again, so you're not caught off guard and that you can just sail through that. Um, the next thing is the roadmap. I call it the roadmap of the piece. This is where you scan down and you look for repeat signs, you look for DCL codas, you look for fines, um, all of those things that can make you get lost. This is not usually maybe part of an audition part, but if you go to a festival and do a sight reading section, these things become more important there. I have been part of ensembles that this is part of the festival or contest is the whole band has to sight read and the director doesn't know the piece either. So these things become really important because it's a big deal if half the band forgets the repeat or doesn't know where the DS sign is or doesn't understand what a coda is. All of those things are tricky when you're looking at it for the first time. I know I can't be the only one that sometimes gets lost in the second ending, right? So be aware of that ahead of time so that you don't get lost and you're not caught off guard and looking really sheepish because you don't know where to go next. Okay. Figure out the flow of the piece so that you do not get lost. The next thing you should look at is accidentals or strange rhythms. Are there a lot of notes with sharps and flats written next to them instead of using the key signature? That could trip you up because maybe you haven't learned those finger patterns. So if you know what's coming, you can keep going and not be so surprised. Um, Maybe there's an alternate fingering that you need. Saxophones, if there's a B, you need to use a C or side C for that if there's a B right next to it, right? If you're doing chromatically, you need to use the forked F sharp. All of those things can go through your mind rather quickly if you're prepared for them. And then you can play it very smoothly. Maybe there's a note on the page that you don't even know. You don't know how to finger it. You don't know what it is. Don't despair. You will not have the opportunity to look up a fingering, but if you know already that you can't play that one note, you can just skip it easily and smoothly kind of fudge it and go on, and it won't derail your whole sight reading experience that way. And you can look it up later when you're actually studying the piece for real. The same goes for strange rhythms. If you look at something, you go, well, that's really weird. I don't know what that is. You can spend a couple seconds going 1 and 2 and 1, or figuring out what the rhythm is in your head without playing it or clapping it or whatever, and you'll have 98% better chance of nailing it when you actually go to sight read it. Okay, all of this makes you a more successful sight reader. The last things that you should check out is the dynamics, the style, and the tempo. This is what makes music music, all of these things. So if you look at it and you say, oh, it's going to start really softly and it says dolce at the beginning, you should know what dolce means, sweetly, right? And so if you know those terms ahead of time, again, keeping up with your theory assignments, really understanding what we're talking about in class and practicing it, then those things become meaningful for you when you're sight reading also. Um, Style, does it say swing at the top? Does it say march tempo? Does it say cantabile? Does it say allegro? You should kind of know what the tempo markings are. You should know that allegro isn't a funeral march. You should know that lento is pretty slow, right? Sometimes they don't have a word, but they'll say M equals 80 or quarter note equals 80, and you should have some general idea of how fast that goes. How do you know that information? Well, you look at a metronome and they'll probably print it on the side, or again, you just know it from paying attention in class when I say things to you and when I ask you to do the homework in class. That it's to prepare you for things like this. So, of course, the more you know, the more successful you're going to be. Um, do any of these things change again during the piece? Does it start out really light and fast articulations and then go to a more lyrical style where you're having a lot of slurs and tenuto markings? That's a big change, and you can earn a lot of points sight reading if you nail that the very first time. Go after the style. Do the best you can to capture the spirit of the piece. Even if you miss some of the notes, if you can show that you really understand how this is supposed to sound, at least stylistically, that puts you apart, because a lot of people ignore that because it's like, oh, we're just sight reading, none of that matters. Well, it absolutely matters. It matters every time you play what the style is, because that is what music is. That's where the feeling comes from. So don't neglect it on sight reading either. It's a good chance to set right from the beginning how you're going to approach playing the piece. So time and key signatures are first. Roadmap, figure out where you're going and how you're going to get there. Look for accidentals, notes you don't know, or strange rhythms that you can quickly figure out, or maybe decide to kind of gloss over them the first time. And then pay attention to the dynamics, the style, and the tempo of the piece. Um, After you have that study time, there's nothing left to do but actually do the thing, right? You have to actually start playing. So you tell the adjudicators, okay, I'm ready to start. And then you should play in your head the first measure. Um, that gives you a chance to cement the tempo, to really know what you're going to sound like before you even play. This should be a habit that you do every time you put your instrument together and start to play. You should always listen to the first measure in your head. If you get in a habit of doing that, you're going to not have as many of those times that we've all experienced, I think, where you say, oh yeah, I forgot this was in 3/4, or this is a slow piece and I counted it off way too fast. Always do that first little step. Make it a habit, and then it won't be a big deal to you. Okay, so once you've got that tempo set, take a deep breath, start playing, go for it. If you make a mistake, that's okay. We understand that. Everybody understands that. Everybody has sight read before, so they understand what you're going through. Just keep going. Don't stop and go, ooh, I really messed that up, or that really sucked. Can I, wait, can I do that over one more time? No, just keep playing. The idea is to do your best performance of this piece without study. Okay, so it's sight reading performance level. Okay, don't start over. Don't make a bunch of excuses. Don't tell the person listening that it sucked. Let them figure that out for themselves. A lot of times it doesn't go as badly as you think. It feels really bad while you're doing it sometimes, but it's maybe not as bad as you think it is. Um, Also, pay attention to what the instructions were. Did they say they wanted the whole thing? Did they say they wanted you to repeat it? Or did they say specific measures that they wanted to hear? Um, don't start playing and then go, oh, wait, how long was I supposed to do this for? Again, that's not a good first impression. If you can't even listen to the directions and follow them, you're probably not ready for that group. And the director is going to be like, maybe they can play, but I don't know if I really want to have to repeat myself every time I tell them something. So pay attention and avoid that mistake. Then, when it comes down to the end of it, stop purposefully, meaning do it in such a way that lets us, everyone in the room, know that you are finished and that you have completed the piece rather than just stop. And then look directly at the adjudicators or whoever's listening, say thank you and smile, and then pack up and leave, right? A lot of times the sight reading portion is the end of your audition. If it's not, then of course don't pack up and leave in the middle of it. But usually it's the end portion. You've already done your prepared piece and your scales and whatever else is on there. And this is just the ending. So make eye contact, smile at them, let them know that you are finished, say thank you for their time, and then pack up and get on out of there. That's basically it. If you follow these things and if you practice following these things, you will, in very short order, be a much better sight reader than you even maybe think possible right now. It's a skill that can be learned just like everything else. So maybe there are people naturally good at sight reading, but most of the people I've encountered that are excellent sight readers do a few things. One, they make sure they know all of their scales, they practice those fingerings, they practice diligently on the more tedious aspects of playing their instrument. They do, long tones to improve their tone. They make sure that they know all the fingerings. They practice etudes so that their fingers and slide positions become natural. All of those things will make you better able to do what is asked of you. And then what they do is they sight read a lot. So spend some time just playing stuff. Grab a hymnal and see if you can play. Just play it. Practice these steps. Look at the key signature and the time signature and the notes and the rhythms and roadmap and dynamics. And then just start playing. See how much of that you can grab the very first time you play. We're going to be starting new music really soon this quarter, and um, we're going to go through this thing to practice. And then every time you encounter new music, I would like you to start practicing this too. And then in a very short time, you will be an ace at sight reading, and it'll become a game to see how much you can grab the very first time and not so much of a scary thing. So, as always, if you have questions about this, let me know. I'm here to help you.